Welcome to the Simple Healthy Life podcast, where our goal is to have real, insightful conversations on topics that we find interesting. And today, we are super excited to have our first guest and maybe favorite human back, Lauren Folan. So welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
The last time you were on, we was a few weeks ago, but we just shared it recently, and some of the feedback I've gotten has been really inspiring. People want to hear more about you and about emotions and about kind of just the stuff that you have to offer. So
I
we
appreciate that.
couldn't be happier to have you back.
I'm happy to be here. I'm excited.
I'd love to start, I think, right where we left off. So I'd love to start. You had mentioned that you went and saw the hugging saint.
Yes.
And I had never heard of a hugging saint before, or I didn't actually know saints were there were any live saints. That's how little I know about saints. But I just assumed they were all old and dead. My bad. Sorry. So if you could tell me and the audience a little bit more about that before we get into the rest of the stuff.
Yeah, of course. So Amma is the hugging saint. She's hugged over 40 million people, which is unbelievable for one.
Tell me about this hug real quick. Is it like a big hug, like bear hug? Or
It's
is it
a
like
big
a little,
bear.
like, kinda...
No, it's a big bear hug, and she brings you right into your chest, and she like pats your head, and she whispers in your ear. She speaks Indian, so you don't know what she's saying, but it is so deeply felt. It is unbelievable, honestly. I've seen people just drop into tears, including myself, just by seeing her alone. And I wasn't expecting that when I first went into the space. I wasn't expecting that to occur. I didn't really know what to expect, actually, but I was just being open with the experience. And the universe was guiding me to her because I heard of her like last year and kept coming up and popping in my frequency. And then I was looking and I was like, I'm going to go to India to her ashram and see her. And then I happened to be looking at something, happened chance, after traveling. I was looking for like a massage, like an abdominal massage or something. And an ad for her popped up. And she was in Massachusetts, an hour away from me. And I was like, oh my God, thank you, universe. Like, so happy for that. But she is the representation of the Divine Mother. And that, a physical representation, I should say. She truly embodies that frequency. And it's an entire weekend, and she travels around the United States in her tour in different places. And it's 2 days. I was in Massachusetts, and then she travels all around of like-minded people, spiritual people coming to hear her message. Where it's coming, they sing kirtan, she speaks, and then it's basically like a hugging ceremony where everybody waits in line and goes for a hug. And honestly, it's 3 days in a row. Yeah, it was 3 days in a row. She sits there for 12 hours at a time, just hugging people. And the last day, it starts at 11, goes to 4, she takes a break. It starts again at 7, and she hugs people till 9 a.m. the next day.
That's so wild.
It's insane.
What is she? Could you paint the setting of her? Like, what does she look like? What is the setting like?
Yeah.
What's the line like? Is there a lot of people or?
Yeah, for sure. So the day I went, there's probably 600 to 1,000 people, and she's up on stage. She has her crew with her, so all of her people who are devotees to Amma. And they sing kirtan, and she speaks. We have a meditation together where just embodying meditation. She speaks about how meditation is so important, how it will change your life, how living in love, basically, heart open, giving, detaching from the material world, yogic principles. And she speaks on that. And then everybody kind of dissipates into their own seats and chairs while they get set up, and she sits on a chair on the stage, and all of her devotees are around her. And like, so it's so interesting because you can't see her from far away because her whole crew, or what do they call like rappers with their crew? What is that crew called? Their posse.
Posse, or roadies.
Yeah. I shouldn't say they're her posses. They're not. They're
Somehow she just went from a saint. In my head, she went from like the saint, like
Yeah.
to a posse, like.
she's,
but okay.
she's wearing a gold chain.
No, get over it.
Okay,
Give me
no,
a-
they're her devotees, and they're all in orange or in white and all the colors and things like that. And they're surrounding her, so you cannot see her from outside. And they have chairs lined up on either side, and you get a token when you go in there, and your token has a number, and they just flip the things, and you're just waiting for your token to be called. And as you do, you sit in the chairs, and then one by one, you make your way up to Amma. And during that, they have Indian food in the back, and they have like a whole bazaar of cool stuff like Amma books, clothes, Indian scarves, crystals, all things people like me will spend all of their money on. And it's all goes to their charity as well. Spends all of her whole life devoting her time to doing good. So helping children, helping women, helping the poor. So many different projects throughout India. She has created and given millions of dollars to benefiting humanity as a whole. So her mission is beautiful. And she's up there with Gandhi and the Pope. Like, she's a spiritual leader of the world. Right. All of these, she's included in the group when they all get together. But she emits this frequency that is, words can't describe. It's just so felt. And when she has a red carpet when she comes in. It's amazing. So they blow a conch and it's like, and then like a red carpet. It's fantastic. When she came into the building, I started crying, like just emotional reaction I did not expect at all. I was heart-filled with this deep sense of gratitude and expansion, and I just tears, like lots of tears flowing down my face. And I was like, oh, wow, I wasn't expecting that. It was so profound for me. And that was just seeing her walk into the building. So when it was my turn to get up on the stage and give her a hug, it's like nervousness, honestly. You're like, oh my God, am I going to do it right? Like all these things come in your head. And I'm like, oh shit, basically. But you get up there, it happens super fast because there's so many people, and her devotees just like kind of bring you over. She embraces you. And when she does, like, honestly, my partner was there as well the next day, and he said similar thing happened to him. It's like electricity runs through your body. So sheer electricity, again, like tears, heart opening. She whispers something in your ear, a prayer, a good fortune for you. People bring their babies, their families, all of these things together to be blessed by Amma. And it honestly just opens up this divine frequency within. It's like a hug by an energy you've never felt in your life. It's like that divine mother. She is the physical representation of it, and you just feel it in that moment. And unfortunately, none of our own mothers, at least mine, I don't know if yours, like, love you, Mom, you're amazing. But the divine mother quality, like, it's not embodied in many people, if any, that I've ever met, you know? So to feel that was so deeply profound. And I could see shifts after that in my life of just more softness, more love in my life. It was days after that where it awoken something within me that even the way I held myself was changing. Like, I thought I loved myself. And then days after that, a whole type of reframe in my mind occurred when I was just like in the shower, and I started crying because I was showering away full of love in a way that I've never loved myself before. Even when I thought I was. It's like one of those things, you don't know what you don't know. And that's what I always find so fascinating on this path. There's always more love, there's always more expansion, there's always more. And even when you hit a point, it's like, oh my God, there's so much more. So it was just an awakening for me, at least. And I can speak for my partner as well, because he shared with me the same thing, that electricity. He immediately crying, like she brought him in a couple times just because the purity of what she emanates is not worldly. Honestly, yeah.
It must have been such a interesting experience. I mean, for the both of you, but almost from like the masculine side too, maybe, because I can imagine, you know, you being at least somewhat familiar with the vein of frequency and love and divinity there,
Yeah.
but I think speaking from like the masculine perspective, that is very foreign for a lot of us, and so yeah, I'm curious as to like how he felt with that.
Yeah, he was speechless after. He had to sit down. So they kept him on stage a little bit because it was so powerful. Like he had to go sit down on stage and just like sit with the energy and just be in it, because exactly what you said, a lot of the men who do it, they break down instantaneously before they even get to her, because it's what you were just speaking to. It's that foreign concept that they've never felt before.
Yeah. Wow.
But she's amazing. If you ever get an opportunity to go see her, which she wasn't here for the past 5 years because of still like COVID stuff, interestingly enough. But I think she'll be coming back every year now.
Oh, amazing.
But yeah, she's amazing. She just has a beautiful message of leading with your heart, helping humanity, and seeing everyone as one, the oneness aspect of it all.
Maybe we'll have to get her on this podcast.
Right.
I'm still trying to get one of these hugs.
Yeah.
Right? I know. Yeah, she would speak only in Indian though, so that might be a barrier to entry.
I mean, for our listeners, not for us. We'd be
Yeah, exactly. You're just going to sit with the
cue
frequency.
cards.
Yeah.
And that's what I felt very honored, just to be there and be in that energy, be in that frequency and connect with her in that way. And I got to sit because you can ask her for a mantra, right? So you can ask for a mantra and she'll give you a personal mantra. And I did that, but you have to wait for it. So I was very honored. Most people like want to be as close to her as possible. I spent from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. on stage, just sitting there waiting for the mantra.
What was the mantra?
Can't tell you.
Oh, really?
It's my own personal mantra.
Oh, cool.
So I repeat it every day, and it's specific to you. So it's like specific to me. It's like what you want to embody. And
Really?
Yeah.
How'd you get it in English? How'd it go?
It's not in English.
Oh,
So
really?
it's in Sanskrit.
And then you looked it up, so you know.
Mhm. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's really, really cool.
And is it vaguely familiar to like other type of mantras, or is it like way out there?
No, it's vaguely familiar, and it's like similar to like the structure of a lot of mantras, people's personal mantras, which generally start with Om and end with Namaha, and it's like the middle piece that's different.
Yeah.
And I think she has probably like several ones personal to her and like what she's created as well. So it might just be charged with her energy.
Sure.
But it's that individualization. You repeat it every day. You're supposed to repeat it 108 times every day. And sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But mantras I just find super powerful because you can just say them whenever. And it can bring you back to that like energetic place of what you're trying to create.
I think mantras or affirmations, anything of that sort, are amazingly powerful. I think they're one of the best ways for someone to heal that relationship with yourself. And one of the ways that I think about it is like almost if you imagine your relationship with yourself like externalized, and every time you come up, you're saying bad things this way. Oh, you're inadequate, you're this, you're stupid, you can't do anything right. And imagine that over the course of someone's life, you're continuing to say these, mean things to yourself. And if I did this to you every time we talked, you would be like, yeah, screw this guy, right? Like that would be a poor relationship. And so sometimes we almost expect to repair that relationship with ourselves without saying nice things, without treating ourselves well. And so I think mantras and affirmations fit really well into the role of improvement.
Yeah, I think they're super important. Honestly, way more important than people
Mm-hmm.
say. Well, I know people talk about it a lot, but it's one of those things that kind of gets passed by. But we truly have the power to create anything we want in our life. And this whole reality is dictated on our belief systems. And if we spent the past 30, 40, 50 years being shitty to ourselves, the only thing blocking from you in a new reality that you want of like abundance, happiness, joy, self-love, all of those things is the pattern of your brain and the trauma you're holding on to. So all you have to do, and it's not like, all you have to do overnight, that it's so easy, but it needs to be consistently done, is basically rebrainwash yourself to be like,
Yeah.
I am amazing. I am awesome. I love myself.
Oh,
And if
yeah.
you do that enough times, then that's what you create in your life, and the universe reflects that back to you. But it's one of the first things to go as life gets busy because it's not instantaneous results. Like I have affirmations all around my mirror at home. So it's like Post-its with everything, and I switch them out whenever I need to, and I'll read them. But even myself, like I'm brushing my teeth, I'll be like, oh, I don't want to do that. It does. The thought doesn't even make sense. Why couldn't I just read
Right.
10 I am statements
Yeah.
while brushing my teeth doing nothing else? But I'll even get in the pattern of being like, oh, I don't want to do that. It's like this clashing effect.
You know how powerful it is when you tell someone who's really down on themselves to practice this and they say that they can't. And it's almost like a foreign concept for someone who has a decent relationship with yourself, because you're like, I don't understand why you can't, just say this. But it's such a clash with their current identity that they feel that they can't even say I'm amazing or I'm good. And sometimes it's like, well, can you say I am fine? I am neutral, or whatever it might be. And even that, it can be hard for people.
Yeah.
It's almost like identifying so harshly with, a dysfunction or being broken, that it's hard to like talk to yourself in a specific way. I find that fascinating.
So I have quite a bit of experience with this lately. I have a couple clients of mine that we've been working on this with, and one of the things for the audience, one specific client of mine can't look herself in the mirror. She won't do it. I work out with her once a week for the last 18 months, however many, you can do the math, and she, even in a room full of mirrors, she won't do it. So what I've found, and maybe this will work for anybody that struggles with that, like Ryan's talking about, she will say, I am determined, because that her current identity realizes that she is determined. She's determined to get better, to like herself, to figure out something that's creating. She shows up every week and works out. She, lifts weights. I put her through workouts that are very difficult. So I found that it's like an entryway in. It's like, I've got her now every day. I'm determined. I'm determined. I'm resilient. I'm determined. I'm resilient, because she is those things. And of course, I add in for her every day, I'm learning to love myself, because she is learning to love herself. But it's an interesting way to kind of get that, like you said, to really start to realize what your self-identity is, in that it is true, right? We don't have to say, I can't tell you you love yourself, but I can tell you that every day I see you, you're determined.
Yeah.
So now we're moving to be determined. The second thing we've had a lot of experience with lately is just kind of this understanding, and for people that probably relate to this quite a bit, like when you're lost, when you're not in a good space, in a good headspace, or you're not feeling light and happy, it feels like it will never come back.
Oh, yeah.
It feels like it's a million miles away. We don't know how to find it. We can't find it. Even to your point, just say it. No, I can't. But when you're found it, when you're in the spot where you feel good, it is so obviously easy. It's almost like we were definitely meant to be in this good feeling state. Just how to keep it, how to continue on, how to not let the things that happen to us on a daily basis bring us back down. And most importantly, how to not let it bring us and let us lose our way again. How does that happen? So those two things have been happening quite a bit in my life. And I would say to anybody, if you are struggling with any of those things, come up with one thing that you know you are deep down. And if that's determined, great. If it's resilient, great. Whatever that is, but start there and work backwards from there.
Yeah. Like two things there. It's scary because people who, it's all they know. And that's what makes it so scary. So many people would rather stay in the known of not liking themselves than stepping out into the unknown and being happy and loving themselves. Because it's like that saying, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't, when neither of these things are the devil, right? All of these experiences are beautiful. But people get stuck and they'll stay in a state of like misery at times because it's all they ever known. And especially people, I was talking with my mom the other day about my grandpa. He's a grumpy old man, but unfortunately, he grew up in a really hard time. He turns 91 in November. He's awesome.
Amazing.
But he's never actually known love.
Mm-hmm.
Like his parents, he was chaotic, abusive upbringing, like took that energy all through his life, and the universe reflected it back. So at this point, he's still that, we don't know if he's ever felt love. And he lives in a place where he likes to stay in the house. He doesn't like have a lot of joy in his life. Even I could give him $1 million and he'd be like, find the bad in it. And I was explaining to my mom, because it's like that energy of, that's all he knows. He doesn't see life any other way because he never had that opportunity to see it in that. And sometimes that's the scary part. It's safer, which is so crazy to say. It's safer to be in that space. The nervous system thinks it's safer, I should say. Conscious mind doesn't. Your subconscious mind does. What you've proved to yourself over and over and through different actions, choices, and beliefs does. So rather than do these new things, the nervous system's like, I don't know that. So I'm going to stay in this state of fear, And it's through taking the chance that really gives us that opportunity to grow, doing the thing that puts you in that challenges that belief system or is a little fearful. Like for me, it was like going to the plant medicines, doing different aspects, going into the dark, I do things like right now I'm in a place where I'm about to really slow down and stop working for, I don't know, a bit. And that scares the shit out of me because my whole life has been performance based, but it's doing little things like that. It's cutting your hair off if you have that huge identity to it. Little actions like that, which slowly tells your nervous system, okay, it's safe. It's safe. And then that's when that container grows for you to be able to get out from where you are. As it is, that place of love is so expansive, it's so beautiful, but I don't, like you're saying, I think we're supposed to be there. I don't think we're supposed to be there all the time. I think we are meant to ride the wave, the up and down, because that's how you grow. But the difference is your emotional capacity changes in those moments that it doesn't feel constrictive or suffocating anymore. It's not that the emotions are too heavy. It's not that the beliefs are too overpowering. It's your emotional container is too small because you were never given the opportunity to learn how big it can actually be and how much you can actually hold in this life. So it's not feeling that expansiveness and staying there. It's being able to ride the wave. And when you're in that bottom point, you're like, oh, this isn't that bad. And I know I'm going to get out of it, because that's what kills us, is being in that spot. And we've all been there and being like, I'm never getting out of here. This is it. This is life for me now. Because we are so present moment based, even though we are so addicted to the future and past. And in that present moment, all of past scenarios is what we're basing our current moment off of. But if we learn to really increase the capacity of our own personal container, when you hit those lower points now, like I was saying before, it doesn't feel bad. It's like you can hold it and you're like, okay, I'm here for a little bit, then I know it's going to shift. And then you go to the other side of the wave and it's like, oh, I'm so expansive and love and all of these things. And it's a beautiful place to be.
So you're saying like people have this like emotional container, and often they don't practice maybe expanding that in some way just by embracing emotion to some degree. And so then if they experience, say, some sort of negative emotion, they short circuit and kind of close down. And just not being willing to accept it, but that's limiting their forward progress, essentially.
Exactly. And they're basing it off of old past circumstances too. They're never even really being in the energy of whatever's going on for them. It's still being based off, well, in third grade this happened, I learned this from my parents. So, or a lot of it is that ancestral energy of what you learned through the whole line. Like 5 generations back will have a impact on who you are today, which is so wild. But even the emotions that you feel in your mother's womb, if something happened, if she was in a stressed state, if she wasn't living a fully fulfilled, grateful life, and she lived in a fear a lot of her life, that's the energy you feel. So that feels safe to you as well, because you're like, oh, this is life. You haven't even had your own experiences yet, but that's the energy you think you're coming out into, and that's what you know in you, and it's in your cells.
Yeah. So let me ask you this then. If someone is, if say the scenario is someone has really never experienced a good relationship with themselves, and they're kind of drowning in negative emotion. They don't remember having joyful periods of time, although maybe they have had moments, but nothing persisting. And say their outward social status is whatever. Like they could be maintaining a job, or they could not be. It could all be destructive. What would be like the first step for, like, what should someone in that situation practice? Like, what is a measurable step? Because I think it's a big task. The task of repairing the way they view themselves and their emotional container in that sense probably seems pretty overwhelming. And what's the first thing that they should probably do?
Yeah, and it's gonna be different for everyone based on who they are too, because one person might have trauma from a aspect in their life that really keeps them like in this solitude type state, where someone else might be able to handle bigger experiences of like, oh, I'm just going to pack my bags, go to ayahuasca and let it rip.
Sure.
It has to be unique to every individual person in every case. But in my opinion, it's starting with pattern interrupts and slowly, gently putting yourself in situations that expand that capacity, which could be something like a cold plunge, right? Like building the resilience there. Going into, if you are anxious about being around people, putting yourself in a situation where there's 5 people around. It doesn't have to be 1,000 people, but testing your limits and telling your body, because you have to tell the nervous system that it's safe. So being like, okay, I'm going to go out into here and come back, and guess what? We're fine. I'm going to do this, and guess what? We're fine. And over time, that grows the emotional capacity. For me, like I say, I'm an extreme person, so I'm a person who can be like, I'm going to plant medicine, I'm going to a dark earth retreat, I'm doing these drastic measures because I can kind of handle that. Not everybody can, but doing simple things and putting a pattern interrupt into your life, like driving a different way to work, brushing your teeth with the opposite hand, doing something different in your life will start to break up the patterns in your mind as well and create more space.
Yeah.
So to grow the emotional capacity, doing things like that, and then connecting with your emotion even more, because most people block it all down, or they're consumed by something really challenging and all they want to be is happy. How can you sit with that and not trying to fix yourself, because you're not broken? And that's one of the major things. Everybody's trying to get rid of how they feel, fix themselves, change themselves, or do better. And even in the personal growth world, it's beautiful because you can change your life in these beautiful ways, but you can also get addicted to the personal growth.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, on this never-ending train of what's the next thing, which I've been there myself too. So taking smaller steps to really sit with emotion and feel into it. And the best way to do that is through meditation and having compassion for it. So sitting in a space where you can just feel into what you feel without thinking it's bad. If you're like super self-critical, if you're super judgmental, can you sit with that energy and just feel it in your body for a couple minutes? And that's all you have to do to start. To tell your body, tell your brain that emotion is safe and there's nothing wrong with it. Like even being in that emotion, what's actually going wrong? When you're depressed, when you're like super anxious, what's actually going wrong? Nothing's threatening your life. Unless you're having suicidal thoughts, things like that, that's completely different. Right. But the more levels that aren't touching and grasping on that, you can work with that. So can you accept that and then even shift it into a more creation energy?
Yeah, so just like basically breaking your current patterns, no matter how small. I like the examples that you give there, the brushing the teeth in the opposite hand and driving a different way to work. And, I think on the last podcast, you were talking a lot about how people create these stories out of things that might be otherwise meaningless, But for people who are very pattern oriented, you probably are more likely to create stories, more likely to create meanings that are things that just might, things might just be things. They may not have this like grandiose kind of meaning, negative or positive. I mean, for that regard. So, and I also like the way that you explain things because I think that you have a lot of like spiritual kind of like energetic talk, which resonates with a lot of people. But you also kind of you know coalesce the scientific stuff in there,
Yeah.
and that's what's so interesting a lot about a lot of the spiritual stuff is, I mean, there's strong roots in like neurobiology. Like the what you're talking
100%.
about is basically just getting into this more learning mode, developing new neural connections, and trying to expand upon that. Have the brain always be trying to like learn new things and get better at those new experiences, and know that it's safe no matter you're going to Peru or you're going
Yeah.
into complete darkness or you're just coming on the podcast.
Exactly. And those pattern interrupts will be hugely beneficial for people because it will then allow you to stop or break the patterns of your own story.
Mhm.
Because your story is very personal to you, and although you think it is the story, every other person around you has a different story. And it's even like this situation right here. I perceive it one way, you perceive it one way, you perceive it one way. None of them, our stories are the same. Because it's all by the filter of past patterns, past traumas, past learned experiences. We all have our own unique individual filter. But if we start to, or if people who are in really hard spots, they start to implement these pattern interrupts and not going in that cyclical thing, because it's so easy in our culture, especially in the United States, to do, because we're so drilled into you wake up, you go to work, you eat dinner, maybe you work out, maybe you spend time with your kids, you go to bed, repeat. That's it. Even think back, I always think back to my away message back in high school. It'd be school, sport,
AIM.
homework, sleep, literally repeat. We've been trained this way for so long. But if you start to break that pattern of even just that, doing new things, switching it up, it will allow your brain to start hopping on to a different frequency, start seeing things in a different way as well. And that's when you can start root in the changes by doing the reprogramming of what we were talking about, the affirmations of like every day being like, I am beautiful, I love myself, I am excited, and really envisioning the life you want to have. There's not one thing, there's many little nuanced things that merge together to create a huge shift in a person. And they're all important.
Yeah, yeah. And the another point on those affirmations is that you're basically saying those things mostly because you don't find yourself in that spot right now potentially, or for someone just starting out, right? Like if you say, I do love myself, and then there might be this little part of you that's like, no, I don't. But you're saying that so that you can get to the place of feeling that way. And so if you say, I am this, those words like I am, it's very identity based. So you're going to start to build the identity around loving yourself, around being amazing and beautiful, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly. I do a practice now where it's anything in my life that I want and I don't have. Part of me wants it. I mean, part of me doesn't want it. Because if I truly wanted it, I'd already have it. So it's like, even take something like more abundance or something like that. Yeah, I want that. Everybody's like, I want more money. I want to be a gajillionaire, whatever it might be. Part of you doesn't want it. It's just how it works. And I know you're like, absolutely not. Consciously, yeah, you want it. Subconsciously, there's a part of you that has fear around money, that says money doesn't grow on trees, that says I have to sacrifice in order to make money, that money is the root of all evil, that if you have money, you are bad, right? So a practice I do is I will, in the morning, spend 5 minutes for like 5 days in a row, and I'll write about the parts of me who actually don't want it. And it's like, yeah, actually, I don't want to have to manage that. The part of me said, that seems scary. I don't want people to judge me or criticize me. And all of these different aspects that come up based around that one belief that you want but don't have yet. And there's everything I've ever done since, or everything that I do of each belief, there's a slew. I can go more than 5 minutes a day. And I'm like, holy shit, didn't realize all of these parts of me are actually very fearful of stepping into the next version of myself. And then after like 5 days, it just seems all of the things that you're writing, you're like, well, this is dumb. And it kind of dissipates all of the fears of reaching that next level that you want. So it's even like the victim mentality. Everyone wants to be happy and healthy and all of these beautiful things, but a lot of people love playing the victim, including myself sometimes. Sometimes I like being the victim, like, oh, I don't feel well. Like maybe you were a little and when you didn't feel well, that was the only attention you got from your parents. So now it's a learned belief. When I'm not healthy, I get attention, I'm loved. So we have this relationship with the victim mentality that sometimes the victim, being the victim, it like feels good because it's what we knew and grew up in. So it's breaking that as well. And it takes time, you know? It takes time to disconnect from that coping mechanism because it's a learned behavior. It's a coping mechanism. It's what keeps you safe. It's much like people who are alcoholics, right? I never say, whenever people say that, I'm like, that kept you alive potentially. Like sometimes those coping mechanisms might have kept you from taking your life or doing something else or whatever it was, your body chose to do that for a reason.
These maladaptive coping mechanisms, they work essentially for their purpose, and they're maladaptive, meaning that we do them for a reason, but they're probably not the best.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
It is, and it's like most times we just take it too far of like, yeah, maybe we only needed that coping mechanism for a year, but now we're on year 10 when we should have shifted. We didn't because we got comfortable, and we're beings that love to be comfortable. But when you start implementing those pattern interrupts, that's when you have more realizations within of those truths.
It's interesting when you say these pattern interrupts. I think about if you go so long without any pattern interrupts and then a major one hits, like let's say you lose your job, then you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
You're like, I mean, not that everybody knows what to do if they lose their job, but like anything, you get injured or you can't do your normal, whatever, then all of a sudden, it's like starting from scratch.
Yeah.
Where if you're like continuously challenging yourself, interrupting the pattern, changing things up, I think that's going to help you in the long run. It's almost like being proactive about change.
Exactly.
And I think that's something that most people are super fearful to do.
Exactly.
Myself included, I would probably say.
I agree. Well, I think we were given a program of one way of living. Because if you go anywhere, I think traveling is a huge pattern interrupt also, because you start going around the world and you're like, what? You're like, people live like this? That's why I love travel so much, because no matter where you go, like I was in Egypt, and when I went there, I was like, holy shit, just like gratitude for where I live, because sometimes I can be a little prissy and be like, meh, United States. But it's seeing these different aspects of why wait for that loss of job to expand your capacity for change. We need to continue to evolve and grow. We're not supposed to stay stagnant. When I was saying, it's like we were giving the idea of the 1920s. You get a job, one job for your whole life. You have a family, and pretty much that's it, right? So we were all kind of, in my opinion, trained to believe that's the way life is. You go to other places. Many people aren't living that way for one. But I truly think the human being is never supposed to be stagnant in life. I think it's supposed to change and grow and evolve, because that's how we evolve as a soul. If we stayed with the same job, the same thing, and there's nothing against it if you love your job and things like that, more power to you. But I think the volatility is what sparks the growth. Otherwise, everyone would stay stagnant. So you see these cultures of the East who just live, and we were talking about it a little bit before, they live as nature does, like being in nature and allowing the ebbs and flow of life, where we are super performance driven and thinking that's the way of life. But I don't think we're supposed to stay stagnant. And I think it's through the change that leads to expansion and that soul seeking that most people thrive for, right? Because a lot of people make the money and they're still depressed, or they have the family and they still are like, wait, what is this life? I think that's where that spiritual connection comes in, of realizing and coming to the idea of like, no, we are just the experience. So let go of the end goal.
Yeah, that's super interesting. One thing that's interesting about people who are somewhat like socially successful, I guess I'll put it, is that you never truly get a good grasp of how they are authentically feeling, because people who are likely socially successful and financially successful know that the answer to like, are you happy or this is the answer for them is, yeah, of course, yeah, I got all this money, I'm super grateful, I'm this, I'm that, I'm that. So it's like you never get this like real vision of how these people are feeling, and so that then funnels you to it, that just get a job and do it the rest of your life. And then, it's also interesting is that people in that, chasing that thing or stuck in that kind of programming, shun and are judgmental to people. Say, actually, I don't really feel like doing that. I don't feel like living that way because I just don't like it, and there's a problem with that, right?
Yeah. It's just so interesting to me to see how different people live. I went up to the yoga ashram. I go to a yoga ashram in Maine, and they live completely as yogis. And they practice in the morning. They eat the Ayurvedic diet. They are off grid. They build their own homes. They live in a way that is the least possibly intrusive to nature as could be, because they are living in a way, and this is their whole belief system, to benefit all beings. They live in a way that benefits all, including the bee to the human. And this idea that the human being is really the neurons of the earth, and we're not here to like destroy, but we're here to gatekeep. And our true purpose is to access the 90% of the mind that isn't active. And that's like they are living in a way to try to activate their brain. And is super interesting to me, because what if that is truly possible, right? And it very much could be. Why are we giving a brain that's not fully active? So imagine what would that look like? And it's actually, they believe it's the true purpose of the human. That is their only purpose on their life, to activate the junk DNA and access 100% of their brain. And when you access 100% of their brain, then that's when, like in yoga, it's called the cities. So it's like literally like teleportation, telepathy, levitation, all of these things. You get these powers because you're just coming back to your natural state.
Right.
But it's just such a different view than most people.
Most people are like, no, you win when you get $1 million.
Yeah.
Screw the levitating. I want $1 million.
Exactly. It's just so interesting to me.
So, all right, question. And we're kind of like changing gears a little bit, and all of that is so interesting. But what is the light language?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So light language it's a frequency. So everything in this life is frequency.
Okay.
Right? So I think it's so funny because there's so many different things about light language, and just in general in that whole world. You can go to a whole world of like Pleiadians, Arcturians, like channeled beings, all of that. So light language all it is, in my personal opinion, is sound. So you're going to have people who say they're channeling a being, or they're channeling a frequency, or they're channeling a star system, and it's a healing sound. But the premise behind it is tone and sound is a healing modality, which it is. It's just vibration, it's frequency. And through that frequency, you can activate different parts within you. It can awaken you. So a lot of people who speak light language or channel light language or do healing things with light language, it's just tones attuned to the person they're working with to activate their DNA, activate their energy, activate their frequency in a particular way. Some people, like I said, might be channeling Arcturian light language, which is like a language from an interdimensional race and that's what they say they're speaking.
Wow.
Some people's light language is you. So they might be doing a healing or a singing on you, and they are singing your energetic blueprint. So the tone they create is the representation of you. And then other people have light language that's for healing. It's just sounds that come through in specific tones, kind of like everything else. Mantra, chants, kirtan, all of that awakens different aspects. Light language is the same way. But in the New Age like realm. It can be healing, it can be interdimensional, it can be channeled. For one of those things, for like that whole aspect, it's one of those things in me. It's like people don't really know what it actually is, but they're just representing something. It's like one of those things where I'm like, people actually don't know. They don't trust, like they say, but it's an energy that comes through for a healing way. Like I'll use it sometimes as well. I don't really call it light language, but when I'm working with people, tones just come out of me. Like I have the sensation to make sound, and I think for me, it moves energy in people's bodies, or it sparks something within them. But it's intention that I think actually is the driving force behind it. And the tone, obviously, because a frequency is a frequency, it's the same thing as a sound healing. It's going to do something to the physicality of the body and the energy. But I think a lot of times people just make shit up. Like I think that a lot. I feel people are so fearful at times of being okay that they actually don't know, and that no one actually knows the existence of the universe or what happens when you die or this, that, and the third, that they try to define meaning with whatever they can grasp onto. And yeah, some of it might be channeled energies. And when people talk about channeling and things like that, which I completely believe in all of those things, but my question always is, who are you channeling? Like energy's energy. I get it. Are you channeling a high vibration or a low vibration? Are you channeling someone who's dead, someone who's alive? Are you channeling someone in this galaxy, someone out of the galaxy? And everyone's will always be like, I know it's of the light. Like, I get that too, but how do you know?
What if it's just like a demonic force?
Exactly. And they're like, no, I feel it in my heart. And I'm like, how do you actually know though? And that's where I'm at with a lot of things right now. Because I've been through so many different spaces and so many different healing modalities that I'm like, most people are just trying to put words to this experience of life. But what if it's just to like embrace the life and trust the next stop, whatever it might be? What if the whole thing is to build trust? And who knows? I don't know if that's true either. It's funny, when I went to the yoga ashram, the guru there, he does have some of the cities. He was basically reading my mind the whole time, because everything he was talking about with his people was all of like, it was about like the new age. It was like, he's like, then you have people who always ask, how do you know? Because that's my number one question. You start saying that. And he's like, no, this is the way. He's like, it's just to activate the mind. It's to get to the 90%. It's to benefit all beings. And I'm like, yeah, I definitely believe in all of that too. But how do you know? He's like, well, that's a grim way of looking at life. I'm like, I don't think so.
It's okay not to know.
Exactly.
And I think we have to be okay with not knowing.
And I think if people were okay with not knowing, how much space and beauty would that bring to their life? Because you wouldn't be so tied to controlling everything. People like to control, like that's all expectations are. Trying to control things, trying to control your partner. Oh, you should eat this or that. You should do that or this. It's trying to keep yourself safe. But if we felt safe in our bodies and we trusted, whatever it is you believe in, just trusted. So when you're on your deathbed, you're like, yeah, I'm ready. I trust, because you just trust. How much space of freedom and joy would that create now for you? In my opinion, I think it would exponentially open opportunities and different directions in people's lives.
This is crazy to me that it's come up again, but this last week I was fortunate enough to speak at a men's wellness retreat. And this concept came up 2 times in the same retreat, and it was faith over fear. And while I'm not a very religious person, I can find that faith over fear to be very impactful for me when I'm sitting in my bed worried about whether or not my next business adventure is going to be successful, or, my nephews are going to be healthy, or any of the things I can't control. And it just comes back to faith over fear. And it's exactly what you're saying. Like, how much space, I find more space in my own head when I just come back to faith over fear. And I trust in whatever it is. And whether or not we're channeling beings, or the muse has come up to tell us what the next thing to do is, or God is telling me that I need to be doing these things, wherever this information is coming from, that's coming into my head, wherever it's coming from, it's faith over fear now.
Exactly.
And I think that is a message that keeps resonating with me, and hopefully I can continue to stay in that good feeling state, keep my mantra, keep my affirmations moving, and essentially stay with faith over fear.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people out there probably realize that that's true for them too.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It is. It's just trust. If you just trust, if you trusted your choices, you would never look back and ruminate on it.
Right.
And you spend shit time doing that. Being like, oh,
So
I should have done
much
this, that. But if you're just trusting in everything that you do, that's when you're in the divine flow. And that's, for me, that's what I've spent the past several years working on. And now it's like really harnessing in that intuition. It's like that inner knowing of just letting that be your guiding force, not looking externally, because it's what we were taught to do. And it just feels so good to get that external validation. But improving and strengthening your intuition so you can just walk forward and be like, yep, no, definitely not, yes. Like, and that's that. And letting go of what we think, what we expected it to look like. And that's the hardest too.
Yes.
Like because what if the universe has something so much greater for you? Or what if it's just not meant for you? Like where you're stuck, or not stuck, but what if you're like in this space now and it's just, that was supposed to be a layover and you made it the mission,
Right.
You made it the destination where you were supposed to stop there for a little bit and then keep going. But because you wanted a certain outcome or a certain result or wanted a certain expectation, you stayed there. So I'm personally working on myself is like that trust even strengthened even more, and even like the psychic energy of it all right now in my life, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, there's only one way that things happen, right? And so when we're ruminating, we're like, oh, it could have gone this way, this way. There's a million and one ways that things could happen. But in actuality, things only happen one way. And so it must be perfect. It must be the way, right? And so sometimes I remind myself that if I'm like, I could have done this differently or that differently. And on one hand, it's like we can learn sometimes from things that maybe didn't go exactly as planned, or even us the other day when we were putting on that retreat, we learned a lot. I thought it went pretty well, but we also learned things that could have been done differently. But yeah, the way things happen is just the way that they happen, and that's beautiful and perfect. And we may not understand it, and there's a lot of things that we might deem as like injustices, but that's the way. That's the way it happened.
Yeah, it's like if you can trust that fact, again, it will free up so much space in your mind. Even the shitty things, you're like, okay, no, I needed that lesson. That was part of the path. It's gonna, and even now you can look back 10 years and you can be like, oh, I see how much that shaped who I am now. So if you're like, no, everything is divine, and that's what I say all the time. No matter what happens, it's divine. And it's a hard thing for people to grasp with sometimes, but trusting that everything actually does happen for a reason, and what is for you will come to you no matter what. No matter what. You can't make a wrong choice. There is no wrong choice, because if the energy is going to still reflect who you are. The energy, the universe is still going to reflect what you believe. So there is no wrong choice. And if we were to stop worrying about things, I think this is another huge thing that if people did, their whole life would change. Stop worrying about things that didn't happen yet. It is like the number one time brain stealer there is. Like worrying about things that didn't. I used to do it with my partner all the time. I'd be like, well, what if in 4 years he's not levitating or eating like about this? And I'm like, what? Like, I'm making up situations that don't even exist.
Right.
And never will.
And never will.
Right.
And when I gave that up, it was like so much space in my heart, so much space in my mind was just open. And I know even like saying that might be very hard for people to grasp, like opening up space in the heart and mind and things like that. But I guess what I mean on like a physical level, it's like ease in your life happens, more time to live in joy and love and excitement than the constant loop. And it's through the patterns of pattern interrupts, meditations, that you can create that space. Those are the practices that support everything we're talking about now.
Or isn't meditation essentially a pattern interrupts?
Yeah.
Right? It's a deep level pattern interrupt. It's like you get to take the brain and push it aside for a moment and interrupt all of those.
Exactly. Practice, interrupt all in those, all of them, because you're going to have a million. And that's, I feel people think that the meditation is the mind goes not like silent. That never happens. It just never happens. Like you might get moments of like, ooh, where was I? I just had a clear mind. But that just comes with practice. But the grocery list still comes up for me.
Oh, yeah.
Or the things that I just want to think about because I'm playing the victim. And this isn't even the victimhood, but it's like I think a lot about like, ooh, what I want to do. Like, ooh, and I'll get stuck in that. Like, I can do this class or this, or what should I be doing? How should I be marketing something? Or like what I should be doing. Because I like it. It like gives me a little dopamine hit or something.
Yeah.
So for me, sometimes in the meditation, it's just that. I'm like, cut the shit. Stop that. Like, be here now. It's still, and I've been meditating daily since like 2017. So
Lately for me, it's been like, ooh, I'm doing it. I'm like, oh crap, stop. Like get back to it, and then ooh, I'm doing it.
yeah, right.
Like, no, stop it, ruining it again.
It's with the more practice, those woos get longer and longer.
Yeah.
Then you're just in it.
Yeah, I had a recent meditation experience that was very difficult. It was very difficult for me to get into it, and then I had one where it was actually maybe the first time in a long time that my 10-minute timer went off, and I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't just like, okay, I know there's only 2 minutes left. I'm just gonna keep practicing.
Yeah.
But essentially, it's practice. So I know that
Yeah.
it's just continuing to practice over and over and over again.
Exactly.
But one of the things, since we are on the topic of meditation, can you talk a little bit about, or maybe I'll tell you what happens to me when I feel like I've had a quote unquote successful meditation. I feel like for me, when I do the practice and when I'm done with it, it allows for more new thoughts to come in, like new stuff just out of nowhere, whether they're good, bad, indifferent, or just random. I feel like if I skip practicing for a couple days, I'm so in my own thoughts and I have the same 20 over and over and over again. When I do practice consistently, these new thoughts come in, new ideas, new desires to do different things. What's like success look like for you when it comes to meditation?
Yeah, it's very similar to that. It's just this connection, like harnessing the connection with my intuition and trust. And like for me, it's just deeply relaxing. It's extremely energizing. I could like do a quick 10-minute meditation. I'm exhausted. And then after I'm like, whew, it's equivalent to like 4-hour nap to me, you know? And it's just this utter sense of being and heart opening when I meditate. And I'll meditate for different things. I have a million different meditations depending on the day. I can do shadow work, compassion, love, manifestation. So it kind of depends on what I'm gearing towards, or just the practice of single-minded awareness. So like focus on the black behind your eyes and just keep staring at it. And that's more of a practice. But the main purpose for me is that intuitive connection, because you can't access the trust and the intuition without the body being rested in a place of being in stillness. And that is because the nervous system relaxes. And there's just no way you will access your own intuition. You might think you're accessing it, but it's actually your ego if you're not in a parasympathetic state. It can't happen. So it's through the meditation that you put the body in that relaxed alpha state. And it's in the alpha state that you can start to create, because you're in a relaxed state. You can start to change the brain patterning. And it's when you can connect with your intuition. So that's why, especially for you, after you're getting these creative thoughts, because it's your actual intuition coming in and sparking it, rather than the ego that has the control, the conscious mind just looping.
Right.
You know?
I feel that.
We were talking on the way here, because they know that experienced meditators, people who've practiced this for a good amount of time, activate these more like dream like wave brainwave patterns. So they're more likely to be in this, and that that results in so many different things: lowered respiration rate, lower blood pressure, like things that we generally think of as healthy. But we're talking about dreams, kind of on the way to the studio here, and how dreams are so fascinating, and we're just like, yeah, I dreamt this amazing thing, and then we don't ever talk about it. But so many amazing things, so many of the best creations that we respect culturally have come from dreams. Like we mentioned, Stairway to Heaven was a dream that then woke up, wrote it down, and then performed later on. And I think you mentioned one other. What was the other example?
Oh yeah, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. written
Somewhere Over the
by-
Rainbow was
he came out of his dream, woke up at 2 a.m. and went down to the studio, woke up the person that ran the studio and created it in one take.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and that's it's like the muse, right? This
Yeah.
thing that we don't know what it is. We don't know it. I see how people can say they're channeling when something comes in, right? This like, oh my God, what a brilliant idea. Like, where did that come from? Like, oh, I must be channeling or whatever,
Yeah.
right? And I see the confusion too around like higher self. Like, oh, it must be my higher self, right? Like, I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I'm just saying I can see how it could be the Pleiadians or
Yeah.
God or or whatever, right? We essentially don't know, but then we go to whatever we believe. But essentially, what we do know is that it's coming from somewhere.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's because people used to always be like, my guides, this, that. And I'd be like, what is it? I'm going to be waiting for this, like, God, like, Lauren, this is what you need to do, like, type thing. And it's honestly none of that. And when people say they're channeling in all of these different aspects, yeah, they could, like you said, interdimensional beings, 100%. But I think a lot of the time it's you. It's that intuitive higher self that's connected to the interconnectedness of all energy and oneness. So it's that aspect, and dreams are so fascinating to me too, because like again, people have all different things of it, of what is it, what even is it. I know people say the dreams are you purging from the mind, like subconsciously purging things you've seen on TV, trauma, ideas, like it's clearing up, freeing up space in the mind, or like you said, like it's these astral travel like projections, which it very much could be. It could be like, what is that movie with Leonardo DiCaprio? Inception.
Oh,
Yeah.
Great movie.
Like
Great
the
movie.
dream state. But it's the dream is a representation of you in your astral body, right? And then the physical body is the waking form. So most times you're in the astral body. When you sleep, you're in the physical body. When you are waking, and then it's the meditation practice that brings you to this casual body, which is the bridge between them both. And that's why it's important for us to be in those spaces as well, to link everything together. Not that things aren't interconnected and linked already. Everything's interconnected, but it's more awaken the interconnectedness of it all within yourself, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, but dreams, like, they fascinate me because it's like, what is it? And even with the channeling, it's like, yeah, are you channeling, or do you want to be channeling the Pleiadians so that energy's coming through? Are you creating that? Or is it, the higher self of like the ethos or the logos, which is the energy that is the fabric of the universe.
Right.
It connects us all. And is it that? Or is it everything and all of it all at
It
once?
could be
and
all of
nothing
it.
all at once at the same time.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I know I could sit and talk with you guys forever, but I feel like we have a natural stopping point. So, is there anything else you'd like to share before we move on? We'll definitely ask you back. So,
Yay! I love coming back here. It's so fun. No, I just encourage everybody to just try to implement like a pattern interrupt in your life. One small thing, even if it's brushing your teeth with your left hand, and watch how annoyed you will get, and you won't want to do it. Because when you think about it, you're like, oh, I want to brush my teeth with my left hand. You're like, super easy. Most nights you're like, oh, I'm just gonna do it normally.
yeah,
It's wild, and trying to like connect with that intuitive part of you through the slowing down practices. And it doesn't have to be a strict meditation practice. It can be sitting outside and breathing the air. It can go on for a walk or something to slow your nervous system down so you can start to hear the whisper of your own body, your own vessel. It's like listening to your body and realizing that everything is already connected at this point in time. It's can you awaken that within yourself?
Awesome.
Yeah, no, that's
You
great.
got anything you
Great.
want to share?
No, I just appreciate you coming on and sharing all your wisdom, and much of that wisdom very much found through all your experiences. And so, yeah, you have a great way of explaining things, and I think a lot of, I certainly learned a lot. I'm sure MJ will, you'll leave, and MJ will be like, "Oh my God, that was amazing! I gotta listen to that right now."
That's what happened last time. For sure.
Well, I appreciate it. This is so fun every time, and I love coming on this with you guys. So anytime you want to, I'm down.
Sweet.
Perfect.
Well,
Amazing.
we love having you.
Yay!
It's nice to have an expert, and it's nice to have someone that practices what they preach.
Yeah.
And you can tell.
Well, thank you.
And what did you say on the first podcast? The myth that is Lauren.
Yeah, the myth. Yeah, seriously, you guys should check Lauren out. Do you want to do a quick little plug for your Instagram and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff?
My Instagram is Lauren Folan. It's most of my stuff's on there now. I'm building a website right now, which will either be like I Am Divine Love or Lauren Folan. I haven't decided yet. But I'll be doing breathworks soon in October and online meditation course. So that's coming soon too. So yeah.
Amazing, amazing. Well, yeah, you can check us out on Spotify and other podcast platforms, and we look forward to having you back next time.
Yay! Thanks, guys.